Right, we're live. I think we're live, guys.
We're live. Welcome to another Scotty and Motty, our second live, and this one won't involve talk about politics or any of the rest of the shit that's going on in the United States. But Steve Howson from Stretford Paddocks joined us, and we're going to talk about something that I want to question because it was the year of the Dunblane massacre, a time when the IRA set a bomb off in Manchester. It was the year Tupac Shakur was shot dead in Las Vegas, although there were rumours that he was later to be found working in a chippy in Collyhurst. But despite all the shit that happened in 1996, Steve Howson is going to tell us all why it was his favourite year. Steve?
I think even despite, obviously, the incident with Tupac, which may or may not have happened, and I don't know if he was working in a chippy in Collyhurst, because I thought he was working as a bookmaker in Burnley. But that was a rumour.
Times are right.
But yeah, despite all those things happening, despite all that happening, I think 1996 was the best year ever. And I know you two. Are you two the same age?
I'm 40.
Oh, fuck off. He's the wrong side of 40. I'm creeping up. I'm 39.
Oh, God, yeah. No, fuck off.
Right, so there's not a lot in it, is there, right?
Yeah.
I'm 37 next
Shut up,
month.
Steve.
I'm 37 next month. So we're all a similar sort of age. But for me, 1996 was a year that I started to proper take notice of music. I think I started to understand football a little bit more, noticing the differences between international football and club football. And I was not just noticing the music, but listening to the different types of music. I think, I don't like the phrase, but everyone will understand it if I say it, so I'll use it. Britpop peaked in 96. I think that West Coast hip-hop peaked in 1996. Arguably, with the death of Tupac, has never been the same. And I think that from a cultural standpoint, I think it's the last time that you can put a year against a movement of all sorts of things that was going on, like Britpop, like the West Coast, and to a certain extent, East Coast hip-hop as well. There was Dunblane, but from that tragedy, there was probably one of the most sensible pieces of legislation which was ever brought about, which was banning of handguns in the UK. And how many school shootings has there been since?
No, 100%, mate. Yeah, you know.
As tragic as Dunblane was, what came out of the back end of that was a pretty positive thing, I would say, in the 24 years since then. You had, I think the Bulls won 72 out of their games in that year. Michael Jordan retired. You had Mike Tyson fought twice, regained his title, and fought against Evander Holyfield. It was, when you look back at 1996, I've not even mentioned United yet. When you look back at 1996, there was a lot happened. And I the only thing that wasn't the greatest was films. Toy Story came out, and Independence Day came out, and fuck all else of note came out.
I think,
and even Independence Day is scraping a barrel, innit?
Did Adam Sandler start becoming a bit more prominent in 96? That's when, or after there, that's when fucking American film went right down the pan.
99 and 2000 was really good for films. I think that was when The Matrix came out. You had things like Snatch coming out. Fight Club, I think, came out around about then. There was a lot of good films that came out a couple of years after that. So maybe we can link it back to 96 and say they were probably written or conceived in 96. And give it a little bit of credit for that, because jack shit happened film-wise. But I think it was just, I mean, even the IRA bomb, I remember that day. I was playing in, and some of you might have heard of this, but I reckon loads of you haven't heard of this. The Greater Manchester Youth Games.
I've heard of them, yeah.
No, I used to play for Manchester Boys, but I've not heard of that.
The Greater Manchester Youth Games was like the Olympics, but instead of representing your country, represented your local borough. So there was Tameside, Rochdale, Stockport, Wigan. Who else would there have been? Rochdale, Oldham. The 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester all competed in every sport, from volleyball to track and field to football to rugby to absolutely everything. And I was playing rugby at the Armitage Centre when the bomb went off, and it's a few mile away, isn't it? Down Oxford Road from where it is. And it shook the ground where we were standing. And we was like, oh, must have just demolished the building. I remember that's what everyone was saying at the time. But I remember it, and then there was this tiny little like single plume of smoke get thin, like in the distance, and then obviously we started to hear. But it was also a time, obviously, pre-social media, and we sort of covered this on Monday on the Brew, where you'd go to the football, you'd enjoy it or you'd hate it, and then you'd go home and I'll see you next week. And I think there was something good about that, and I think that I'd go back to that if I could. I mean, obviously I can't. My job kind of relies on me being a fucking turbo gobshite 24/7. But I would go back to it.
I'll take life on the dole if we could get rid of social media.
It was weird though, wasn't it? And I like you, Steve. I remember the bomb, and I was working in Asda in Trafford Park, and my mum had gone to town, and if memory serves, I don't even think she had a mobile phone. I don't think she did, because they were around mobile phones.
Brother.
What? Sorry.
Not unless she was selling drugs. No one had a mobile phone then.
You had like pages, I think, back in them days. And I remember we couldn't get older for a little while, and then I was ringing me dad.
A live video because it's private.
What? It can't be.
On private chat.
No, it's live. It's live. I've got 30 odd bods watching it. I don't know why it's on private.
For me then.
Yeah, there's people in the comments anyway, so no one's told us it's private. I think it's just in this this bit. I've got the YouTube up, so yeah, it's all good. People saying The Rock as a film for 1996 as well. One of your faves, Paul C2K. I don't know what he's on about. I do like The Rock though. I do think that's a good film. What I was going to say to you is, I was at Asda, couldn't get hold of my mum. One of those ringing home, and eventually she rang my dad at home just to say she was fine. And I did a thing on this on the radio, a documentary like 20 years on after the bomb had gone off. And a lot of people in Manchester, you look back in it and you go, do you know what? And this sounds really crass, but some people almost looked at it as a positive, because I know that sounds ridiculous, right? A bomb going off can be a positive, but no one died. We rebuilt the city centre, and people say, oh, you know what? Maybe it wasn't that bad. But I remember speaking to people who were there that day who, even now, 20 years on, hadn't been back to Manchester City Centre and things like that. And it was like, you know, to them, it was something they lived with for the rest of their lives. So it was obviously harrowing for a lot of people, and especially in those days when it was that unknown, wasn't it? Because you just didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
There was all rumours going around, or, you know, I remember the rumours were going around that loads of people were dead, and you couldn't get, you know, now you'd be able to go on Twitter or whatever and find out what's going on. But in those days,
false information,
yeah, it was like, you know,
Train Spotting. Lipo says Train Spotting did come out in '96. It is, that was one of the other good ones that came out.
Mate, that took over the world, that, didn't it? Train Spotting. That was everywhere, and I hated that song. Me and you spoke about this, haven't we, Scotty? I hated that Bum Slipping Me. Honestly, mate, I'm not having it. That was a good song. It was fucking horrible. It was, man. It was. I remember I got a bowlers once raving, and they played it at the end of the night, and it proper sent me under. Honestly, mate.
Come down tune.
Yeah, honestly, it was one of them. It was like when you, it was just, it wasn't a great year for films, even though I do like it a lot. But music, mate, you mentioned there some of the sort of the music. The music was a 96, and that sort of era around Britpop, even though I hate the term Britpop, and a lot of those bands were overrated, but the one that you always think about, and I don't think they're necessarily, I know they're involved in that, but I never class them anyway as Britpop, were obviously Oasis around that time. They were just, that was probably their peak.
Ocean Colour Scene and people like that. That's what I more associate with it. And, you know, I was listening to a lot of that. For a minute, Supergrass. 96 was also the year I think Jarvis Cocker just like terrorized Michael Jackson at the Brit Awards. Like, there was honestly so much went down in 1996. It's just the best year ever, because I don't know, maybe it was a year before things had to start getting serious in other aspects of life, or at least for me. But, you know, other music came out. Reasonable Doubt came out by Jay-Z. You had the Fugees release the score. The kits were fantastic. United were good. Like, Cantona played that entire season. He was gone halfway through the next year. So, like, do you know what I mean? Like, minute.
Yeah. I think when you're talking about our ages as well around that time, it's sort of when you're becoming you're getting older and stuff. And around 15, what I'd have been in 96 is when I started getting into drugs and girls a lot more. I remember the Nintendo 64 came out in 96 as well, and then just getting blipped listening to All Eyes on Me and then playing fucking GoldenEye on the N64, mate. They were the days. I would take that.
So does it get better than that? I never had an N64.
Oh, mate, I've never been into gaming, right? You know I'm not into gaming, but GoldenEye was, for me, the best game ever. Piling around your mate's house, getting on it, playing GoldenEye till 4 a.m. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that went on until we were in our 30s.
95, 96 then.
You what?
I was playing Championship Manager 95, 96 then. Trying to sign Summer.
You mentioned though, like Ocean Colour Scene, bands like that. I remember they were more or less sort of came to prominence because I think they started supporting Oasis. I remember seeing Oasis a few times around that time, including Knebworth. And Ocean Colour Scene with a support band, and I think that's what took them to the next level. And then that album, someone in the chat was saying it. I think Crimson Kate was saying, yeah, Mosley Shoals, that album, if you remember, had like the Riverboat song on and a few others as well. And we were speaking about this. I don't know if you remember it, Steve. Was it CFI Friday with Chris Evans?
Yeah, they had it as a
Friday was a good show.
Yeah.
It was a great show.
It was.
And whether or not you think Chris Evans is an insufferable prick nowadays, at the end of the day, that was about as cheeky as TV could get at the time. It had an F-bomb in the title of the show, kind of. Like, it was cheeky, wasn't it? It was good.
Chris Evans is one of Jay's favourite people of the 90s. We've got a podcast about it. We had a podcast where I did top 10 people of the 90s, and then Jay put in Chris Evans because they both worked at Key 103 and he really looked up to him. Right.
Before you start digging me out of this one next, like, I can see you pulling your face, right? And you little grass.
He used to go around in a ginger wig in Urmston.
Yeah, I was. They called me Urmston's answer to Chris Evans. That's what I'm modelling my radio career on. We were doing about like the 10 most iconic people of the 90s or whatever. And I said in the 90s, my exact words, whether you liked Chris Evans or not, there's no denying that for a period in the 90s, he was everywhere. And he changed the face of television. He did. The Big Breakfast changed breakfast television. CFI Friday changed evening television. It did. Do you know what I mean? And like, you can go, all right, he's become something else now. He's on Radio 4 and it all imploded. You know, he bought, Virgin Radio off Richard Branson and just changed all that. Do you know what I mean? So got to give him his due because, you know, for a ginger bloke from Warrington, he made it work. He did.
Didn't even know he's from Warrington.
Yeah, married a pop star as well, didn't he? Married Billy Piper, I think. Do you know what I mean? So not too shabby considering, you know, like I say, he grew up in like, you know, one of the worst towns in the Northwest. No disrespect to anyone from Warrington, but, you know, it's sort of that in-between place, isn't it, between being Scouse and Mank.
Yeah, I used to call people I played rugby with Scousers that were from Warrington. They didn't like that.
So, I mean, someone else in the comments saying Suede were mint around that time as well. Coming Up was a great album. Suede, I always think, were a little bit like 93, 92, 93. They were around that time.
They were sort of
commercial success, I don't think. Not to the level of a lot of what Britpop lads like Pulp or anything did.
No, but I think when they first came in the scene, Suede, they were sort of seen as they sort of kicked the doors down. I know Oasis went on to do a bigger, but Suede's first couple of albums, I think there's a front cover on Q magazine of it, Brett Anderson in the Union Jack, and that's where they reckon all the Britpop sort of things span on after that. But yeah, it's a fantastic year for music and all that in 1996. And like I said, Supergrass as well, like that All Right tune, you couldn't escape that summer. Do you not think it was always hot in the 90s though? Like I know that we live in a city where it's predominantly, you know, rain and fucking miserable weather. But I used to always remember, like, it might be the drugs, might be the drink, you know, but it was always sunny when I was a kid.
Well, the Manchester Bond Day was Redders. I remember that. Was it June 12th or 17th, something?
June 11th, I think it was.
So you know, that I remember that was Red Hot that day. I can remember. I mean, I used to buy my CDs in Woolworths in Ashton. Red Hot going. I've got memories of going buying singles. I think I went and bought Supersonic. Probably was 94 actually. There was definitely some stuff on. Definitely Maybe came out. Not definitely Maybe. Morning Glory came out in 95, didn't it? But a lot of the singles came out in 96.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Wonderwall. It was Wonderwall 96.
Because you got to remember as well, me and Scotty have spoke about this, and I don't think people now will ever get this. Well, they don't because you download music now anyway, so it's different. But the Oasis B-sides were ridiculous. Like, if you've got that Master Plan album, which is the best of those B-sides, basically, you know, when Oasis released the single, even if you had that single already on an album,
as good as that. let alone B-sides as good as that.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like Master Plan,
Also, it's got
Acquiesce.
Rocking Chair, Acquiesce, Master Plan.
Yeah.
I mean,
Listen up on that.
It might be me, but it was like, because you used to get them, didn't you? Like those like SIG boxes. That's what they made it to look like. One of the CDs. I remember you
they did a limited, they did a limited
Yeah.
edition, didn't they? What the Bensons and whatever.
Yeah, Benson Edges, like, and it was like, you know, when you used to get B-sides for singles, they'd just be a remix. That is all you'd get. You know what I mean? A remix or extended version or live version.
I think
It was.
if I remember right, on Wonderwall, I think Wonderwall's single was Round Our Way.
Yeah.
And the Master Plan.
And Swamp. Yeah, and it had Swamp Song on there as well, I think, as an instrumental.
On the single?
Yeah.
So what sort of single? That's literally as good as half of people's albums.
It is. If you had that, it's like, if you had those 3 songs, you'd think, let's just put another 7 filler songs on this and I'd call it an album.
Yeah.
It'll still get to number 1. Do you know what I mean? That is ridiculous. And Oasis, like, I went to Knebworth that year. I was lucky enough to go. I was only 16. And like, they previewed a couple of songs off BA. Now, I know you like that album, Steve. I'm not really a big fan, but I know you do. They previewed It's Getting Better Man and My Big Mouth. And I remember just thinking, like, how lucky I felt, you know, to have a band like that who was so good at their peak. I was just a kid on, like, the verge of being old enough to, you know, start doing things that I was already doing. But they were just amazing at that time. They couldn't do any wrong. Do you know what I mean, man? It was just like everything they did, the singles, the albums, the concerts. I saw them a few times live, and they lived up to it. Because sometimes, you know yourself, you go to the gigs, especially around that time, and you know people look back at it and laugh. But you know, when you got the band all out of their head and they're not performing or whatever, and you're like, you know what? It wasn't as good as it's made out to be. But they were as good live. Do you know what I mean? They were like.
Do you remember the Seahorses?
That was John Squire.
Wasn't that about 96?
Yeah, it was. I think it was, because that was an anagram of He Hates Roses, or is that just a coincidence?
That sounds like someone put on Twitter nowadays if they've seen it. I think that's a conspiracy theory that Ian Brown would probably come up with himself.
I remember they had a big fallout, didn't they? And I remember someone saying, "Oh, it's an anagram of He Hates Roses," but I don't know. The Seahorses is just.
I wanted to go and see the Seahorses. And I fucked up and ended up getting a ticket to go and see the Shire Horses. Right? But the Shire Horses did parody songs based on the Seahorses songs, and it was still banging.
The Shire Horses, were they from aren't they that band from Lancashire? The Shire Horses, or am I thinking of someone else?
They did like parody songs, but they were class.
I'm sure they were from might be completely wrong here. I thought they were from Lancashire, from like Preston or somewhere. I've clicked on it, and the first thing that comes up with is a roll with it, and then You're Gormless instead of You're Gorgeous. It was parodies. Oh, it's Mark and Lard,
wasn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, that's where I was getting confused. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I thought
I was gonna go. I don't think this was in '96. I think this was a bit later. But yeah, I thought, I fucking like some of their songs, and I'll go watch them. Still had a good time.
Yeah, a few people saying they were on Radio 1 at the time. Mark and Lard, yeah, I remember those two. They weren't on Radio 1 long, I don't think, Mark and Lard. Well, they were on the breakfast show long. I think they did it for a year or two. But yeah, there was lots of like almost one-hit wonders around that time. You know, like bands that came up and part of the Britpop movement that did 1 or 2 good songs or had 1 good album, but then you didn't hear a lot from them after that. And some of them, like
Oasis is so good is that they had so many good songs.
Yeah. I think a lot of record labels as well at that time were trying to sign the next Oasis, and that's why you used to get all these sort of clones with the same haircuts and fucking shirts and guitars and stuff. And it does show the sort of testament to the songs that Oasis had that were fucking just exploded. And it was more than the music; it was the whole culture that, you know, it took over the whole city. And like I said, about '96, I started going to pubs and stuff, and everyone was wearing either the Ben Sherman or the Burberry shirts and the kicker loafers. You know, fucking banana. What they're called? Not banana. That's bucket. I don't know what banana hat is, but
never did the bucket hat thing. But you wouldn't see me not walking around in a Ben Sherman shirt or something along those lines, just because that was what every fucker was wearing.
A uniform, wasn't
So
it?
all of the older lads around us and stuff was all wearing like jeans with like long sleeve Ben Sherman shirts. You got to rock it.
Yeah. Do you remember though? But nowadays, when you go to, and I know you don't drink anymore, Jay, and I've stopped. But you know, when you go to the pub nowadays, people don't dress like they did in the 90s. It was like an occasion. You'd have a shirt, wouldn't you? And all. I know this may sound proper old, but you would, wouldn't you? You put on your best fucking, what were them shit shoes called that everyone used to have? Cost 150 quid for a pair of boots.
Rockport.
Probably Rockport.
Rockport. Them, yeah, that was in the Rockports and all that.
I remember that clubs in Manchester started banning Rockport. Like, if you wore Rockport, you couldn't get in because even though they were 150 quid, they were like
Scallyware.
Yeah, it was Scallyware. It was like if you had Rockport on, you were up for a fight. It
basically came with a spray away jacket.
It came with a spray away jacket and at least a 10 bag of draw. And it was like they knew.
I'm feeling triggered here. I had a spray away jacket and a pair of Rockport.
Of course you fucking did.
And a 10 bag of draw.
And a 10 bag of draw. Yeah. You know? We went from the posh.
I was Ellie Hansen rather than spray away.
Yeah, I was a Berghaus man myself.
Fuck off, Chris Evans wanted me.
It's mad how I don't know at what point North Face stopped being librarian wear and started becoming Roman wear in Manchester. But I bet the same thing happened with Sprayway. Sprayway was what like geography teachers wore for a bit. And same with Ellie Hansen was what like tough sailing types wore for a bit. And then it just became Mancunian Scallyware for a bit.
Yeah, it was like my teachers doing outdoor pursuits in school were wearing all fucking Berghouses and stuff, and then we'd all start wearing them and have to find something else to wear.
How it shifts dead quick. And it's mad how it was like a uniform for so long. It felt like at least 3 or 4 years there, like everyone was in it. Like everyone was wearing the same sort of thing. And like you say there, you might be wearing Ellie Hansen or Berghaus or Sprayway, but it wasn't that different. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it was a similar thing. Do you know what I mean?
There were ski jackets for people who lived in a city with no fucking mountains.
I graduated from having a Fergie Umbro coat into an Ellie Hansen. That's what you knew you were growing up.
Yeah. You're not wearing that Umbro anymore, man. Get out of there.
I was like, that was your rites of passage, wasn't it?
Mate.
Yeah, not wearing a United coat. What one of them? What, that they wear on the fucking... on a sailboat near the Arctic. Yeah, one of them, yeah. That's what I want. I'm all about my sailing, me, man.
Yeah, I love sailing. Sailing and skiing. That's all we do in Joyles, dude.
Can't move for it.
Oh, Cam Waters is in the comments. Might as well be on a podcast. Yeah. Well spotted, Cam. Was on the ball as ever. Steve, you mentioned it there about obviously Fergie and football and why, like you're a United fan and you've been through like you've seen United win Champions Leagues and titles galore and trophies and you've done loads of the aways. Why 96? Why is 96 a special year for you in football? What do you think it is that makes that year stand out for you more so than 99 in some ways anyway, 2008 and them other years?
My first game was in 1990. We were FA Cup winners when I first started going, September 1990, start of the season 1990. So I missed the FA Cup. The first cup I saw us win, you might have heard of it.
Go on.
It was a 1991 European Cup Winners' Cup. But I went to Wembley and watched us lose in the League Cup that year as well to Sheffield Wednesday. My first experience at Wembley, and I got the match ball, and I took it in school and played with it on the playground because I was fucking like 8 or something, and what else am I going to do with a football? So, 92, obviously we do win the League Cup. 93 we win the Premier League. 94 we win the double. 95 we don't win anything. Oh, that was a new experience to me. If only I could have that conversation with myself now, but that was the first year that I was like, well, hang on. We're not having a break this year for something. Fuck.
Annual party.
Yeah, man. Where's that annual end of season lap of honour and party? Where's that? So that was a almost like an awakening a little bit of, because let's be real, it's very easy to support United. Now, I know that none of us have just decided. I think we were all birthed into supporting United, but let's be real with ourselves. It's a very easy club, certainly in the 90s, to support. So that first realisation of like, oh shit, You don't win things every year. And my favourite player, the guy that I absolutely idolise, Cantona, suspended through the back end of '95 for trying to sort out a bit of racism in the crowd. So '96, I remember, being shit a little bit, really, at the start of that season. It turned over at Villa. Was that Southampton that year as well, I think?
Was that great shirt?
Swatted, yeah.
5-3 or whatever it was, 6-3 or whatever it was.
Like, I remember those. All right, we still won a double. It was hardly like, oh, poor us. But I remember it wasn't the most straightforward, like, you just win stuff. That's how it goes. And I remember the build up to winning the title that season. The form of Cantona was outrageous in the build up to winning the league, and I understood how important the winning of the league was. I remember very vividly watching the FA Cup final at my nana's with the entire family there watching it, and buzzing with an 85th minute Cantona goal against the Scousers. That team, I think, was the first real team that I fell in love with. You had a David Beckham with wearing 24 on his back. You've got the young Gary Neville, and actually Phil Neville was seemingly the preferred one coming through at the time. You saw the debut, I think that season or probably the season before, of Paul Scholes. You've got the emergence of all of these players really starting to take hold around about this time. And it felt like there was a connection to that team, which I don't necessarily feel a lot these days.
Yeah.
And then seeing that team, I think it was different in '97. I think the last 5 or 6 games of watching Cantona's, and I'm saddened by the way Cantona left us too in '97. So it's not a happy memory from '97. Whereas '96, this leader came back after everyone doubted us that you won't win anything with kids and all that. Like, this leader come back, led the team with attitude, and led from the front with how he played, which was a different sort of leader than what we'd all been sort of like trained to believe what football leaders are meant to be. Sees us win a double playing some. I mean, I think all of us here probably in agreement that '94 team was a bit of a monster of a team. It was raw power sort of team. That '96 team was the first team that I think we all would agree could play football. Like a team that would just go and one-touch the shit out of you. Fast play, into the channels, whipping it in. Delicate little touches from Cantona that were just filth. And I think that was a team that we could all look back. And let's be honest, there's never been a redder kit than that '96 kit. That if you could bottle the colour of that kit, because if you buy one of them kits now, it's faded. That ain't how it looked. There was a blood red to that kit, if you remember. It was like a matte finish. It just looked different. And it stands out to me big time. I'd never forget the colour of that kit. It was the reddest kit we've ever had.
Yeah.
It was, that season as well, like, I was 15, so it was a similar age, and like you, I'd seen us start winning things, and I got used to us winning things. And I remember Cantona's return at Old Trafford against the Scousers, and that's one of the most important games in history. And that sounds melodramatic, but I'll tell you why. For a few reasons, like everyone was watching Cantona. What's he going to be like? Is he going to be the same player? He's had this layoff. Has he got the ump? Is he up for it? That Liverpool team had the likes of Redknapp, McManaman, Collymore, Fowler. They were regarded as they were highly rated as a young squad, almost more than our squad was.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
McManaman was more established, Fowler was more established, Redknapp was more established. So likes of Beckham and Scholes and players like that weren't as established as those. And people thought Liverpool now have got a team that's going to dominate. United are on the way out.
Everyone underrates all our youngsters coming through.
Yeah, 100%, mate, 100%. And then that game, I think we drew it with 2-2, Eric with a penalty. And then, as you mentioned, Steve, if you look back on those results, you'll see 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. Eric Cantona. And I remember one commentator on the radio, I'll never forget this, he said, we won, I think we beat Arsenal or someone 1-0, and he said, Eric Cantona continues his one-man crusade towards the Premier League title. And it felt like that. I know we had all these other wonderful players, and that defence as well, don't forget, was proper solid.
22-year-old Roy Keane, 23-year-old Roy Keane.
That's what I mean.
Like, can you imagine finding a 23-year-old Roy Keane now? Oh my God!
They're worth about 500 million. And it did, and like to get the Scousers in the final as well, and for them to turn up in them disgusting yellow cream suits, white suits, like, you know, thinking the big time. And that was arguably, like, in terms of football, probably the worst FA Cup final there's ever been. But all anyone remembers is Eric's goal, and it summed him up as well. You know, that fantastic finish through the eye of a needle, and it was just like, you know what?
How do you hit that?
I know, like, you're falling over, right? You're trying to get your foot around that.
And he doesn't lever it either. You know what I mean? It's just so fucking surgically placed between the defenders. It's just incredibly shot. You make a great point. I
remember Radisha did a drawing of it where they did a cartoon of it, and it was just all of like Robbie Fowler's leg and like everyone's leg just sticking out as he just flew past him.
But you make a great point, Steve, regarding the changing of maybe a generation, because as we're all a similar age, the United that won the first couple of premierships, that felt like my old man's United team. Whereas this, when it was when Alan Hansen did all the "you'll win nothing with boys" sort of thing, and that felt like this is my United now. Do you know what I mean? And then I was telling my dad more about what Eric Cantona was doing, or David Beckham was, and all that.
Robbo was an 80s player. Let's say it right.
Yeah.
You know, I feel we're all older than what Brian Robson was when he left United. But I remember that hearing the conversations in the pub and in the Stretford end of how Robbo's old. Robbo was 34 when people was having them conversations. Like, that is years ago for us lot. And I'm thinking, shit, like, when you're done when you're 34, that's you. Well old. And he's always that old in my head, like, and I'm like, shit, I'm older than when Brian Robson was old. But yeah, I think all of those players, even to a certain extent, you know, your Mark Hugheses and Ince, they represent your pre-Premier League era United, really. Robbo especially.
Robbo,
but yeah, those 100%. lads that came from the mid-90s onwards. That and didn't Solskjaer sign in 1996?
I think so. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
You know, that was that new era. In fact, that was a great summer of signings, I think, wasn't it? Because was it Podborski, Cruyff, Johnson, and Solskjaer?
I think so. Yeah. And it was the one that we'd not heard of, or that we were like, who? That was the one that turned out to become the biggest legend and go on to managers. Where, you know, you remember, like, and we're going to move on to this in a minute, but Podborski, you remember from the Euros, obviously, you know, Cruyff, I think, as well. Like, was he that time? Jordi Cruyff, was that him? Did you say
he signed that summer as well? Yeah, and obviously it's Johan Cruyff's kid. How can he be shit?
Yeah.
I mean, did we sign him for Barcelona as well? Am I right in that?
We did. Yeah. But, you know, as you mentioned there, we signed Podborski after that goal in the Euros where he lobbed the keeper. And, you know, the Euros was the first time that England did anything like, I know they did Euro in Italian United, but I was very young. I was only 10. I didn't really fully understand it. But 96 was the first time I've sort of got my head around what was going on. It was over here, so you had all these games going on at Old Trafford, at Wembley and everything. You know, that was a big part of that year, wasn't it, as well, Steve? Obviously, I know we're not. None of us are really like massive England fans, but as a country, and to see that football and to see the players, even if you're not an England fan, just to have those players over here playing in a tournament, it was just a massively exciting time.
Like it or lump it, Baddiel and Skinner's song really captured the nation. And as a teenager, or 12 maybe, I think I was at the time, there's no way that you're too cool for school. Nowadays, you just call them cunts or nonsense and just get on with it. But like, when you're 12, you buzz off it. It was a sick tune, really. Like, you know, Fantasy Football League on a telly, like, they're talking about football, but they're talking about it in a normal way, and they're not wearing a shirt and tie. Like, they're wearing a footy kit and jeans, and they're having a pint while they're doing it. Like, Fantasy Football League was amazing. And then you did have an England team, which, you know, I'll be honest, I probably cared about more than any other England team since, you know, because it was obviously pre the '98 World Cup. Everyone was like, you know, you'd go and watch the matches on the telly, and then you'd go and try and recreate some of them goals on the park. You had, like I said, the games at Old Trafford. I think I watched Germany, Italy. Definitely watched, I think, Germany, Croatia. I think I went to 4 games at Old Trafford anyway. I did the group stages, like whatever there was in the group stages, and then maybe one of the quarterfinals or something like that. And we got tickets in a North Stand, which was built for Euro 96, wasn't it? And I remember like the first time in there, the fucking stand shaking with people, and you're like, what is going on here? But, you know, yeah, I mean, I got into it. Got into Euro 96. Like I said, was finding my feet. This is as well pre-Twitter expert, where everyone knows about every obscure player in the world. But you've heard of Maldini's coming to play. You know, that you'd heard of like 5 players. Maldini was one of them. You know, I think, did Klinsmann play or not play? There was a thing about Klinsmann with Germany anyway, whether he was or wasn't. You know, there was a few different players. I think Boban might have played for Croatia. So like there was a few superstars that was coming to town that you just didn't really get to see. And it was also at a time when the Champions League wasn't like almost run of the mill like it is now. Like the Champions League was still exciting, especially if you got a big team and you'd have like really interesting teams and interesting players that would come and visit that you just didn't get. So it was great. And it didn't represent this for me, but I think I could sort of feel the representation of this, like, you know, following Hillsborough, following the Taylor Report, following all of the changes that happened in football around the Premier League. There was like a positive, like, sort of air about football that was tangible. Like everyone kind of, you know, you had bands that would be wearing footy shirts and telling you who they supported. That didn't feel like it was something that happened prior to that. Like, it was all right to be a football fan. Like, you wasn't second-class citizen, you wasn't a hooligan, you wasn't a criminal. It was like everyone was into football, and that was the vibe I got at the time.
Yeah, that's what me and Jay were talking about this on the top 10 90s the other week, and it's like, I always think the mid-90s or the 90s as a decade is when certain things like, we were talking about the films, British films, came to prominence. We talked about music earlier on, guitar music came to prominence, and football as well. Because whilst I was aware of football in the 80s, and when you look back during the 90s, it was more of a sort of, it was a cult thing, wasn't it, for casuals rather. That was the sort of outside impression when you were looking in the newspapers and stuff. And like I said, it was that the England 96 team was very tangible. And then when you look where it went from there, it became quite sterile because you had the likes of Gazza and Sheringham. And, you know, like I hate however their lives went or whatever they were doing, they were blokes down the pub that you could relate to as a person. Whereas I think the more we got towards the end of the 90s, the distance between the fans and footballers the gulf started getting bigger and bigger. Whereas in the 96 team, like I said, it was a tangible force. I thought the competition was a bit overrated. England were looking to get as far as they did. On a side note,
no, that's every international tournament ever, isn't it? Really,
it is. And you know, when you look at it just like that, you know, I think we drew with Switzerland. We robbed Spain. We robbed Spain with one of the worst decisions ever. You know, obviously, but I think for me,
with Scotland, for fuck's sake,
yeah, the Scotland. Funnily enough, the Scotland game was the same day as the IRA bomb, wasn't it? That was the day that actually.
Yeah.
But for me, the one game that stands out in that Euros, and the one game that you can't really follow England for because it was a great performance, was the Holland game, because that was a decent Dutch team. Let's have it right, you know, and we just battered him. And Sheringham was just outstanding that game. He was. I think he got a brace. He was class, obviously. Shearer weighed in as well, and that was sort of like the pinnacle of that team. That performance for me was just fantastic. And I think the funny thing is about that is, just as a United fan, you go to the next tournament, 98. That's when it all went sour. I don't think you could have, you know, everyone sort of bought into the England thing in 96. After 98, loads of Reds were just like, England can fuck off. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because of the way they treated Beckham, because of the nonsense, burning effigies and all that nonsense. Whereas in 96, like you were saying, Steve, it was like a team you could get into. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, well.
I'm playing.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It was like, It was sort of, you know, you could really get into it all and get behind it. And okay, you know, it didn't really. It's weird because we look back at it with nostalgia, and it's a tournament in England that Germany won. It's like, but we still look back at it like, you know, with a bit of fondness because we, you know, I think the main thing is we didn't completely embarrass ourselves
because it had an anthem.
Yeah, you're right, and it's that era in it, like you were saying there with Britpop, or with, you know, sort of football culture and fan culture and music becoming a big part of that, and it not being like football fans are all hooligans, treat them like dogs, put them in cattle pens, keep them away from society, because they're just animals. It was like, you know what? We're all in this together. They're not. Young lads are getting into the football. They're into the music. They're into the fashion. It's a different. It almost felt like a different era, didn't it? From like, you go back to like the 80s when all that horrible stuff was going on, and then you're going into the 90s, and it wasn't until sort of maybe 96 where that all came together in a pretty positive way, really.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, the 96 maybe to 2000 was like, it was peak working class, wasn't it? Because all these people we're talking about all came from working class backgrounds, all the bands, all the footballers, all the movie stars. We're talking about Kate Moss earlier on and stuff.
Yeah, this was like, I've just thought, this is peak Loaded magazine.
Yeah.
This is Maxim and Select and stuff like that. And it was lad culture. Because the chicks were ladettes, because they was drinking pints or something.
Yeah, that's it.
There was something about, I can't remember the name that they was using it. There was like loads of fake, like people from Shropshire and Sussex that were pretending that they grew up in council estates. So I can't remember what the phrase that they used for it was, but it was like everyone, partially because of Oasis, partially because a pulp from like Sheffield or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like everyone wants to be from a working class city, but like Tarquin from fucking wherever in, you know, whichever fucking school he went to in Shropshire, like wants to be a part of that as well. I can't remember what they was using as a phrase for it. But yeah, it was professional football was still accessible, and professional footballers were still accessible before the mega stars that don't sign autographs are now. You know, I mean, me and Jay spoke about this a few times, where you could literally go walk up to the cliff and go and literally like walk onto the pitch, and there would be 8 feet of blue rope, and you just kind of stood casually near it, and you could watch Manchester United train, and there wasn't 900 security guards, no one tackled you, like, and you could probably shake Fergie's hand if you waited long enough. And man, like, I did it. And I go, fucking hell, I never realised what I was doing. I just did, like, I'd wag school, go to the cliff, and like, that's mint, isn't it? To like, I'd go and watch Eric Cantona train in that Umbro, what was it, Umbro Pro training kit, or that sick, like,
the one that used to come over the top, didn't it? Yeah, that was fucking mint. Yeah, but and when you look at, I mean, the people who are watching this now, the distance between what we're talking about. I remember going down to the cliff and meeting Danny Wallace. Danny Wallace, one of my favourite players when I was growing up, and just be able to walk up and wait and meet him. I remember meeting Eric Cantona when they opened up JD Sports in the Arndale Centre. Remember when the ball on the ceiling or whatever, when that first there, and he had like his signed Nike Tempo boots in the window and stuff. But what did Robson have on Market Street? His birthday cards. Remember when Robson had his own
birthdays?
Birthdays. Yeah. Because
they was also in the programme. Like, they had an advert in the programme. I guess that's
there was one in Ermston. There was
Mates Rates. Yeah, Fergie, I'm start out.
I don't think it's funny. It's funny you mentioned me and Steve were talking about going to the cliff, and Scott, you mentioned Danny Wallace. I posted a picture on Twitter the other day. I found some old photos from the cliff, and I'm 13 years old in the picture, and I've got my arm around Danny Wallace, and I look like his dad. He was so small. He's like 5'4" or something. I'm like, come on, son. Let's go and play football.
I found a website today, or someone sent me a link to a website today. And we're going to enjoy this, Jay. So this website started to build an archive of the full 90 minutes of loads of United games.
Stop
Goes all the way back to the Babes. There's not many. There's like a handful of the Babes. It's mostly cup finals, semi-finals, stuff like that. But I just happened to click on United Torpedo Moscow 92, 93 before Danny Wallace, and I was like, man, I don't remember him being in the Premier League team. He must have played a couple of games tops, and I was thinking he probably only played in that Torpedo Moscow game just because of the foreigner rule.
Yeah.
Because he probably wasn't. It'd have been Kanchelski's, wouldn't it? Probably.
Yeah, Danny Wallace. I mean, I think they said, because he suffered with MS, didn't he? I think they said the first signs for it was when he was still at United, the very first sort of indications of it. But I remember
like a heavy touch and something. It'd be what's going on?
Because he lost his pace. He was a massive, he was a rapid player, and all of a sudden his pace drops off, and he was still in his 20s. And it was like, what is going on with this guy? And people just thought it was the occasion and the club, the size of the club had got to him. Because when he first came, thinking sort of the late 80s, early 90s, he did well. He played a part in the 1990 Cup run, the FA Cup win. I think he scored in the semi, was it, against Oldham? And then, he sort of almost fell off a cliff. I think he ended up dropping down division, go to Birmingham City. And even there, he was struggling to get a game. And it turns out he wasn't well. But, I think there's a lot now of respect for Danny Wallace because of obviously what he went through. And, he came here, won trophies. And then obviously, even in those days when you weren't a success, you still won things at United. Do you know what I mean? Now, even if you're a success, you don't win anything for 3 years.
Back Bruno is probably one of the best players we've ever had. He's probably going to go away with a fucking League Cup medal in 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas you could be terrible at United and still end up with the title. But Danny Wallace, he was, and like going back to what you were saying today, I mean, me and you were talking about this on Howson's the other day. I remember the first time we went to the Cliff, my mate nicked Mark Hughes' training tracksuit bottoms. We were sat on the side of the pitch and they were playing and he walked off and they were there and he just sort of leant over and I was like, what are you doing? You can get shut out. And he's like, by who? No security here.
Yeah, by who?
And
Archie Knox ain't paying attention, mate. We're sound.
Exactly, mate. It was like, and I remember like being in that car park because it was just a car park. When you go there, and the car park was there, and the players were coming out and getting in the cars. And I remember waiting. Put at the time, I know he's person non grata now, but Paul Ince was my hero, and he came out. And I'll never forget, he was holding a bag and he had his keys in his mouth and he was signing autographs and he just passed me his bag and said, hold that for me a minute. And I was just like, I'm holding Paul Ince's bag. This is amazing. It was just crackers. And I feel a bit bad now for some of the younger fans because, you see it, they can't even wait outside Carrington now, can they?
No.
Whereas, obviously we could just go and chat to the players.
Watch training.
I know.
What a treat that is. We got to do it in the Wacker on tour. I don't even know what year it was. Was it last year? Fuck knows. Feels like longer ago than that.
It might be the year before. Last year.
Yeah, it was last year. We got to go and watch training, and it's a cricket ground in it, the Wacker. So we're sitting in the stands. They put a security guard on us because I don't know what the fuck they thought we were going to do.
They
stuck a security guard in front of me and McCullough. And it was like, you here to watch us? Jokingly. And he turned around and was like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. And then there's nobody else in the entire stadium apart from like United staff. And then we got to just watch the entire training session. It was a lovely little treat. And I remember then thinking about that at the time going, I could literally go and watch the Premier League champions as a kid.
Yeah.
Blag school, get there for like 9:30, just stand, not have a clue what's going on. It's probably just 5-a-side anyway at the time in the 90s. Just watch the best team in the world and then get the bus back into town. Like,
it's mad, isn't it? And now you can only do that. You can only do that nowadays if you're the Leeds manager.
Yeah, he'd have had a field day, wouldn't he, back in the day, Bielsa?
Just turning up with his Leeds United jacket crossed out and just standing there.
But no, it was just such a magical time because United, then from '96,
did all right, didn't we?
Yeah, we did all right, and those players that came through, they turned out not to be too bad, and that was the sort of the beginning of the real dominance, really, wasn't it? Because you had the obviously '99, and then the superstar sort of team coming about a few years later. It was just amazing, and that whole thing, like we've all touched on, the sort of lads mag, pop culture, everything coming together. Even I know it sounds a bit fucking old fashioned, like even like when the Spice Girls came out and all that girl power and things like that, and people make a lot, but it was something different, wasn't it? And you didn't have that before. It was like it all felt new and fresh.
Who's your favourite, Jay?
Are the Spice Girls?
Yeah.
Oh, it's got to be Baby Spice, hasn't it?
See, I'd say Baby Spice now.
No, I don't know.
By a mile, but at the time, I think it was Scary Spice.
Mine was Jerry, I think.
Mine was Jerry, but I would never marry a woman like Jerry. No, nowadays it'd be Baby. Jerry
it's Baby all day now, but yeah, Scary Spice at the time, I think.
No one going for the dirty one, no. Sporty.
The Scouse one.
No, oh mate, no.
I was raised right.
Can you imagine when they arranged that girl group and like Posh Spice has got her like posh frock, and then Jerry's got the Union Jack dress, and then they've gone out to the Scouse girl. He had some Adidas trackies. And
yeah, but she went, "That's boss."
Yeah. Oh, are these for free? Gonna keep these? Fucking hell, mate.
Oh, mate.
Someone in the comments saying, didn't Baby Spice briefly go out with real Ferdinand?
No, but once she's going out with someone out of Damage, wasn't she, for a bit? That boy from Damage.
From Damage, I think. He looks a little bit like
you think? Look at you knowing first names of boy bands in the 90s.
Listen, Damage were up there with another level as two of the best 90s bands. Not quite on the standard of 5.
You had all them, didn't you? Had like Eternal, wasn't it? Louise Redknapp was going, Louise Nerdin or whatever. She was going out with Jamie Redknapp and all that sort of nonsense. And there was like Posh and Bex, I think that around 96 and all that. It was just mental time, man.
But it was good, and I think the tabloids. I mean, the tabloids hadn't got a grip of all of them just yet. I don't think either, really. I mean, Beckham got pasted with it, and as soon as 98 came round, they was having him before it, because the Sarong was before the World Cup had started. Yeah. Like, that was on holiday before the World Cup even started, so it just had to be him that ends up getting Simeone sent off in it. All these lads are managers and club owners now.
It's mad, that, innit? It is like, because sometimes you get caught in that capsule, don't you? You still look at him at times, like from that era, and you think, oh yeah, he's managing our opponents today, or he owns that club now.
I'm reading Big Sam's autobiography at the moment, and I obviously never experienced Big Sam as a player. He was done and dusted before I started watching football. So, like you said, Simeone, he's a weird one because he's a player and a manager in my head. Like, there's certain people that are, Frank Lampard, not fucking ever going to respect him as a manager. Are you kidding me? So is Davies. Like, even Ryan Giggs can't take him serious as a manager. Like, but there's people who are you're just a manager, and Big Sam's one of them. Like, he was just a manager to me. Like, but finding out about his youth career coming through Bolton and all the rest of it, I'm finding it fascinating. And I love shit like that, because like I literally just don't even think of him. Like, it'd be like finding out about Arsene Wenger's youth career. You'd be like, what? He was a footballer.
It's weird, isn't it? And like Big Sam is a weird one because he was mates with Fergie, wasn't he, Big Sam? I think. Yeah. He was one of the few managers.
Both loved a brown envelope for a player, I think.
Yeah, allegedly, yeah. But my missus has been in the comments saying it was Jaden from Damage that she went out with, in case anyone was worried that who Baby Spice went out with. Glad we cleared that one up.
Not Rio.
Yeah, some other brown geezer. Steve, I'm glad you picked 96, mate, because I almost forgot a little bit about that. Me and Scotty are obviously, we love the 90s, but some of the things you talk about, especially with the football, do you know what I mean? Like the Euros.
But even basketball, Michael Jordan, was Space Jam 96?
Oh, that's a good question. I was watching that the other day, funnily enough.
Did you not get a little bit fucking? I can't watch Space Jam. The girls are watching it, and then I heard R. Kelly coming on, and it's just completely ruined all my sort of songs. Do you know what I mean? and I'll phrase this very, very carefully. I lost my virginity when R. Kelly was playing on the stereo, because the other day I had this conversation. I was saying I lost my virginity to R. Kelly, and it had a completely different context.
Yeah, you're wrong with that.
Were his lawyers like, oh, another one? With the let's offer a settlement. How much do you want?
Take a ticket and sit at the back.
Yeah, go on.
I didn't know you pissed on little boys as well.
You're killing me with this shit.
Who advised him to go and do that? What a bad interview that was.
That was like Prince Andrew's interview, wasn't it? That was just like, this is a good idea. Yeah, this will go really well. This will get everyone on board and make them not think I'm a massive nonce.
James Young, did you watch the Manchester Giants at the 9X? Yes, I did.
Oh, good question, that, yeah.
See, this is like everything felt possible. Someone said Denise Van Out and Johnny Vaughan, Big Breakfast. I don't know if Johnny Vaughan was 96, but it was around that time, and you're right. It was a belting, actually good, funny show when I was 12.
No, it was like, we were
I
talking
take
about.
I take it now instead of Piers Morgan on fucking Good Morning Britain.
I'd say
why is he alive?
I'd say watching paint dry over fucking Piers Morgan. Honestly, I'd watch anything. I'd go and watch Traffic. Another update. Baby Spice is still with Jaden, in case you're wondering. Mrs. has just commented. You're right about the Big Breakfast as well, Steve, because we were talking about this where it's got, breakfast shows used to be like, Ann Diamond and Nick Frost or Nick Owen, sat on a couch. And then it was like the Big Breakfast was just mental. Like, they were doing interviews in a bed with Paul Yates. They were sat in a garden in a tent. It was just like, what is going on? This is nuts. Like, just before like you went to school or whatever. It was completely different. And for that time, it's like when Soccer AM started or whatever started. It was just funny. It was quality.
Do you want some factoids about the Big Breakfast?
Yes, please.
So some of you people watching probably know the geezer called Neil, who's sort of like the director at Hashtag at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
The geezer behind the camera. Well, he worked on a Big Breakfast. And I don't know what level of influence he had. But when he left the Big Breakfast, he went to Soccer AM. And you can see the Big Breakfast in Soccer AM. The producers with the headsets, the clipboards, the breaking the third wall, talking to them. Like, that crossed over from the Big Breakfast to Soccer AM. And Soccer AM as a concept, at least, apart from it being called Soccer, which was egregious from the off, like, it was a good show because it was, like I said, at the time, nothing like the Big Breakfast existed, and certainly what did we have for football? You had Grandstand, Match of the Day, and Go Fuck Yourself. That was your options. So having something of a magazine show like Soccer AM, it might have gone cheesy, and it might have ended up being one of the worst representations of 90s and like absolute FHM distilled down into a minging Sambuca aftershock shot. But at the end of the day, what they did was create entertainment, a bit like what, Fantasy Football League. Is it naff now? Yeah, a little bit, to be fair. But when it came out, it was groundbreaking and it was entertaining. And that was the same. Big Breakfast, Fantasy Football League, Soccer AM, all of these things around this era. And it was people, I was going to say of our age, but we're probably fucking way past that boat now. It was younger people actually getting a voice on TV. It wasn't knobheads in suits. It wasn't all cottonies or posh people. It was people that actually spoke like us, dressed like us, acted like us, and were actually trying to have a laugh about doing stuff. That's, that was what the cultural shift was around about that time, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I always think of the 96, 97, and then, like, say, if we look at 96 for the peak, and then 97 is like them nose diving into fucking obscurity with some of the bands. I always think the working class discovered cocaine, or is more available towards the 96, 90 to the end of the millennium. Would you reckon, Jay? Not because you're our spokesperson.
That actually ties in nicely with my life trajectory. But the thing is, though, you've got to remember, these were working class lads or women who had fuck all. Like, if you watch the Class of 92 documentary, which I'm sure we've all seen, you've got someone like Manny and people are talking about how Thatcher gave them their starting life because they had no money and they had nothing. So they went and learned how to play guitar and, they sort of went from absolute poverty almost, really, in some cases, to having all the money they could ever dream of. So, yeah, there was a lot of that went on. And unfortunately, we all remember Oasis and bands like that and Blur and Pulp and bands that made it. But there was so many good bands around that time that had, that one hit, had a little bit of fame and then just dropped off the end of a cliff because, they imploded. And it's a shame because there was some really good bands there. But, it was... I think you remember, there was a band from, I don't know if they were from that. I think they were from London, but Flowered Up, for example, I think they had one hit song and that was it. And then, they got into drugs and stuff like that. It happens, but that era, that time, from 96, mid to late 90s, especially for music, now you're revisiting it. Now you go back to it. Now it's popular again and people listening to it. People listening to Oasis.
25th anniversaries of X, Y, and Z, and it'll be amazing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's like people are going back to those, the Definitely Maybes and the What's the Stories from Oasis, going back to Part of Life and Blur and revisiting it and going, these are the best albums I've ever heard. And we were in the middle of all that, and you're like, what's going on there? What is all this about? It was And then, to top it off, the icing on the cake is something's just flashed up that the Scousers have just been beat. So, happy days.
Yeah, man. Right, Steve, before you go, 1996, you have to pick one player, one song, one film.
Cantona.
Controversial.
Wonderwall.
Oh, outside the box.
Not really.
I know.
Do you know what? Let's keep it domestic. Let's go train spotting.
Can't argue with that, mate.
Man, that's a good shout for why 96 should be a favourite year.
Yeah, that is. When you look at those three there, they're like, three of the greatest ever.
I mean, we've not even touched on All Eyes on Me or anything.
I mean, you want to, if you got to do an honourable mention to Mr. Shakir, you can do. Do you know what I mean? There's no.
I remember giving we used to know a baghead that would go and steal the CDs from HMV if you give her a $5, and All Eyes on Me was 20 quid because it was a double disc. And then we'd basically get like £5 off out of our mum's purses or whatever, give it to this baghead, and then she'd run run in and get steal All Eyes on Me, and that was our sort of CD collection. There and that.
We used to know a baghead. I shouldn't even say this, but I don't know if I told you. I think I might have told you this day. Like my mate, and I'm blaming my mate because it was him. Got caught shoplifting in HMV. Nicking Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion 2.
Fucking hell. And
we were about 13, 14, right? And I didn't go back in HMV till I was about 32. I was that paranoid. Something like 18 years before I went back in there. I was, still looking around at that, thinking I was going to get my collar felt. But yeah, it was some good music there. No matter whether you nicked it or got a baghead to get it for you. And All Eyes on Me was one of the better albums.
Yeah, definitely. Right, Steve, thank you very much for coming on this week. Motty, I'll see you on Sunday. Steve, come back on anytime you want. Do you reckon that Jaden calls them a baby mama?
MacBook Pro 2
anyway.
disconnected.
On that bombshell.
Been sat on that all night.
Mate, I can't believe it,
Baby spice, baby mama.
Yeah, we get it. You don't need to explain it. See you later.
See you later.